Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to pick up where Senator Anastat left off. However, we're debating the Republican plan at this point in time, so I would like to get back to the point at hand and simply ask the authors, and it could be Senator Anastat, it could be any of our Republican colleagues on the floor. Senator Anastat just took us through what he didn't like in the Democratic Conference Committee report. As I mentioned, that isn't what we're debating at this point in time. What we're debating is really what our Republican colleagues have put forth as a plan. The issue, from me at least, is Senator Anastat laid out some things that he didn't like specifically about the plan. He talked about specific numbers, things that he disagreed with. But there are some issues we have with our Republican plan. I would just like to ask the author of the Republican plan just 3 questions. So I don't know who I'm addressing this to. Senator Hollingsworth seems to not be on the floor, so maybe I can address this to Senator Dutton or anyone else prepared to talk about the Republican plan that we're currently debating. Okay. The first is we have in your plan the IHSS cuts that obviously are trying to achieve an additional $750 million savings. And the question I have is that legal? I mean, first and foremost, we're cutting $750 million over half of the program. And is this going to be a legal thing, or is this something that we've put into this budget to kind of move this forward?
Senator Dutton.
Yeah, I can't I can tell you what happened during conference committee because we actually discussed this. And the bottom line comes down is we've got some problems, we've got some abuse that's taking place within the system. There was numerous things that were recommended that we ought to take a look at that would help create some situations where we could stop some of the abuse and some of the excessive waste in the program. However, as you just pointed out, Senator Florez, in the past, modifications to the program have met legal challenges and were not permitted by the courts. So the suggestion I made, and I'm willing to fulfill that even today, is if we can't figure out a way to reform it, then you just cancel the program.
Well, I guess the question would be whether that's legal or not, and I think that would
You can cancel the program. Where the problem we ran into is trying to modify it so that it would actually work. Then if we don't provide it, then we can just cancel it. And that's where I'm frankly getting to in a lot of this stuff right now, because I've drugged this thing out long enough. I've been working budget for 4 years. Yeah. A lot of the changes that were proposed back in February, especially in health services area, they were challenged legally. So what you're left with, once you're challenged legally, you may just have to eliminate programs, and that may be where we're at.
Well, I guess, Senator Dutton, as you re-caucus on your plan, I think the issue would simply be, why didn't you just do that then? Because indeed what it seems to be occurring in this is that we're trying to achieve $750 million more in additional cuts, and we're not sure we can do that legally. The second question I have, obviously, it has to do with corrections. And in your particular plan, you plan to achieve about $250 million additional cuts to corrections. Now, in the governor's plan, it was very clear what he was doing in terms of shifting it. Where are these savings that your plan, where are you finding these? Can you lay out the exact cuts to corrections rather than some block number? Can you kind of lay out for us exactly, specifically, where you're going to cut in corrections, and so we can get a full understanding of exactly what it is we're voting on today in your particular proposal?
I would have to actually defer more of that to Senator Hollingsworth as far as specifics in this here, because what we've talked about is an unallocated cut within the Department of Corrections. For an example, we did take a look at 800, and I believe it was 30 some odd million dollars worth of cuts that the receiver representative, we did certain things that he almost guaranteed that he would actually achieve those cuts for us. We felt it was better to allow those that are getting paid these huge salaries to actually make the determination how best to achieve those savings. But we do feel that's a very real possibility given the fact that currently we are spending a tremendous amount of money in comparison to other states. They're just not reasonable to assume that those savings couldn't be incurred by making some changes in our requirements.
Okay, well, I think if Senator Hollingsworth could come to the floor, since we're debating Senator Hollingsworth's plan, it would be helpful. Obviously, Senator Dutton, more of my questions are really simply, as we're voting specifically on your plan, Senator Anstett was very keen on pointing out the deficiencies in our plan specifically, and I think for us, when you see a cut of corrections in this magnitude and yet not tied to and actually running away from the governorship, we're just trying to figure out how we actually get to that particular cut. You've mentioned
well,
things
if it was
that
up to me about making the cuts in Department of Corrections, I would start with the headquarters first because they've seen the greatest number of increases of employees, and I frankly would take a look at cutting there because I frankly believe you need more guards in the yards and you need more cops on the streets, you need more firefighters in the fireplace. But the bottom line comes down, yes, we're going to have to find some better ways to do things a little bit cheaper, and if you've got any suggestions on how you would like to achieve those, I'll be more than happy to vote for those cuts too.
Well, we do. We're actually in our plan.
But we will debate that at the appropriate time.
We will.
Thank you.
And it would be great if maybe after this debate you can actually submit to the Pro Tem's office or to the members of the floor exactly how do we achieve the $250 million cut that you're proposing specifically, not, we could, there have been things, we could cut $250 million from administration. We all know that isn't necessarily the case. There's no slight on the plan, but we are debating the plan, so I would be very helpful to see if we get some specifics
I have
on that.
for years now, since my first year in the Assembly, I've participated in all the prison reforms that have taken place. I have actually presented ideas and so forth. There's been nothing new. I did the same thing in the subcommittees earlier this year under Senator DeCheney's leadership. And so, yes, our positions on what we felt was good and reasonable and achievable has already been made public. So,
right. The question is whether it's in this plan, although it's been made public and discussed. The other question, the last question I probably would have is on Medi-Cal, because we've debated this quite a bit. And I guess the question simply is what happens if the federal government actually refuses to give a waiver on the policies that are predicted in your particular budget plan in terms of refusing health care to those people who cannot pay? What happens if the state isn't granted this particular waiver? Because your plan is pretty much predicted on the federal government giving this waiver. No other state has received such a waiver. What makes California somehow able to get this waiver that would make your plan work? Senator Hollingsworth, maybe you can answer that question.
Thank you, Madam President. In response to the first question, the unallocated reduction to the Corrections Department in the amount of a couple $100 million is no different than the unallocated reduction in your budget of over $800 million to the prison health system. So we have talked to the LAO and to others in the Department of Finance and believe that that is absorbable at the Department of Corrections without the public safety impacts of the $250 million in either your plan or in the original part of the May revise. Again, you're trying to point out the differences between the two, and they're very small when you're talking about an $84 billion spending plan of only $300 or $400 million difference. On the federal aspects of the Medi-Cal waivers, we have argued this for the last several months in committee. We've argued this, as you know, in the Big Four and in the Big Five meeting. But your experts, your staff, don't think that we can get the waiver. Our staff, our lawyers, and the administration's lawyers think we can.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Hollingsworth. And I guess the issue on correction was simply also how your corrections numbers differ than the governor's, and the governor has a different plan to get to that. Let me just close my members by simply saying I do appreciate the debate. We are talking about the specifics of both plans, and I very much would ask our Republican colleagues to continue the dialogue with the Pro Tem and ongoing conversations with Senator DeCheney, because clearly you have mentioned some issues with our plan. We have some very deep concerns about trying to figure out how your plan actually adds up in certain cases, and we very much appreciate and continue the dialogue with you.